friends, welcome back to our channel Hi-Fi Study for You. Today in this module we are going to talk about a very important biological process which takes place in each organism present on this blue planet, and this biological process have a special name, is called the reproduction. So the main motto of today's module is about reproductive system of each organism. So now, as we are knowing, firstly let's introduce this important topic to you. Now, as we are knowing that this earth have two things in common as to define life. So there are two which are living and the second is non-living. So what defines, if I ask you what are the difference or what are the factors which defines that something is living or something is not? That I am living and this is non-living, this marker is non-living. So what defines this? So yes, you will say the motion, the movement of an object. If object moves, is living. But if I say that trees can't move, but they are considered as living because they are autotrophs, they make their own food, right? Now this is the basic thing. Now in each living organism, reproduction is an important biological process. It plays a very important role. But firstly, let's figure out and find out what's reproduction. Now you can see the board is full of many stuff. So what are they? As you can see, this is the male reproductive system. This is the female reproductive system. We will talk about it later. Okay, let's put it aside. Get rid of this. Now, firstly, what is reproduction? This magical process, what is reproduction actually? Now reproduction is actually nothing but, here comes re. What you are knowing? Re means again. So it's means again. Production, the same thing. It's again producing of offsprings, and again generation to generation. Why reproduction is important, if I ask you? So why reproduction means why it's important? So it's important to continue the generation, the species of each organisms. Like let's forget about all living organisms. Let's take humans. Now firstly, if you thought that there are only one single human on this earth, now what happens if that single human don't reproduce? Then we are not here this time, right? So every organism has to reproduce to continue the generation, because as we are knowing that the lifespan means what is it, we talk about it. So it is the period from birth of an organism, from the birth to death. The lifespan, the timeline is defined as the lifespan of each organism. Not so stuff, it's like from birth to death, right? Every single organism has to die at this time, right? And every organism have a defined lifespan. Like humans have mostly 100 years, like and butterfly. If we take all examples, like each organism, like horses have 60 years. It doesn't factors are not that size don't depends on how much lifespan of an organism is, right? Now like take an organism like cow. It have the lifespan of 20 to 25 years, right? And take one more, parrot. Can you see here? Yes, parrot have a lifespan of 140 years. Do you see the difference? Size doesn't matter, right? Lifespan differs on the basis of not size. Okay, so this is just what about lifespan. Okay, so everybody have like from birth to death. Now reproduction we know is very important. We have to possess it. Now first firstly, what are the modes or what's the type of reproduction are present here? So there are mainly two types of reproduction or modes of reproduction present here. Now let's talk about them. Firstly, we have to rub the spore, but first let's talk about each one, then we will talk about the later. Now the first, this which I have written here, is about the sexual reproduction. The first type of reproduction is sexual reproduction. Firstly, figure out what is sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction is nothing but producing offspring by the fission of two organisms, one male and one female. Now the fission is called like fertilization. By this fertilization, what produces a beautiful, magical, never seen before offspring, and this is what done by these all. So let's talk about these. So the first is the male reproductive system. Let's talk about the male reproductive system first. Okay. So the very first thing here, as firstly, this is the sexual reproduction where two parents are involved, one male and one female. So this is the male reproductive system. The very first thing here is the urethra. Now what is urethra? It's not involved in like reproduction, but it's given in image, so I have to tell you. Now urethra is actually like a muscular shape which is present to store the urine till you don't excrete it. It's a very important part of your excretory system. Okay, so this is the urethra. Now these are the tubes. Now thick tubes which are called the ureter. Ureter are the tubes which carry the urine, okay, from the lungs, from the kidneys, okay. So these are the ureter. Now after all, now the next thing which you got here, the very important part of male reproductive system is the testis. Now if you heard of this term, testis is actually responsible for the production of nothing but called the sperm. You can't see here like because all the more stuff is written here. Okay, now this is the sperm. What is sperm actually? If I have to tell you a rough sketch of sperm, it looks something like this. So it's like tail, middle part, okay, and here is head. Now this is like a sperm. It's actually such a like it carries the gamete, right? It carries the chromosome, the XY chromosome to the male body. Okay, so it's just like sperm. The production of sperm is done by testis. Okay, very important function you have to keep in mind. The testis produce the sperm, very important part. Now this is the testis. Now there are two pairs of testis. There are various important things that you have to keep in mind. There is scientific reason that why testis is present outside the body of male. There is a reason, scientific reason why, because what happens, the temperature of the body is very high, actually. Normal temperature is about, we are knowing, 37 degrees Celsius. Now the temperature is high, but the production of sperm needs a lower temperature, so it's outside the body. So they are outside the body, sac-like structure which is called the testis, so which is outside the body because the production of sperm needs the lower temperature because the body's temperature is high and it needs lower temperature. Okay, clear. Now the next figure which you got here, very important, is nothing but the accessory gland. Now this new term, accessory gland, so you might have heard about it. Now accessory gland is nothing but these are the glands which are responsible for a multitude of sperms and help it to move easily and provide lubrication to it. Lubrication is nothing but means reducing the friction so that it can move easily. As you can see the image, right? It's having a tail. Why it's having the tail? Because it can move easily throughout the body. Okay, throughout, not just a reproductive part of the female. Now Okay, clear. Now the accessory gland have some very important glands. Now the first is the prostate gland. Prostate gland is the largest of accessory glands. Now the prostate gland is very important, right? It provides to move the sperm very easily. It's having like a fluid which is called the seminal fluid, okay, which is provided very easily to move and nourish the sperms for the production of offspring in female body. Okay, now there is one more sac like structure here, very blob like structure, very small. Both pair of seminal vesicle. Seminal vesicle is also known as bulbotuary gland. What happens here? Its name suggests it's like blob-like structure, very small sac-like structure, which is responsible to provide the lubrication to the sperms. Provide the lubrication to sperms by which it can reduce the friction. Okay, to move very freely. Okay, now this is the prostate gland which is provide the sperm. Now what happens here? There are few structures present here. What these structures do? These structures produce sperms. Then this structure on the top of it, like cap like structure, which is known as epididymis. Now this epididymis is actually take these sperms, and through this sperm duct they put it above, and then from the seminal vesicle, prostate gland, and there is one more structure called the penis. This is the urethra, right? Now a part of urethra, okay, of the excretory gland. Now this is the penis, which is responsible actually for like tube or funnel shaped structure which provides the transport to the sperms to female. Okay, now this is the important parts. Now this is called the vas deferens. These tubes which are the sperm ducts evenly, okay, from that it goes and then they goes to the female body. Clear? Male reproductive system, no doubt. Now these are the important parts of reproductive system of male. Now let's look at the female reproductive system. Now let's come into this. Now this is actually like, firstly it starts from here. Now this first structure is the fundus. It's called the fundus, like cap like structure is called the fundus. Now firstly this is the uterus. Uterus as like responsible to nourish the egg. As we know, the male gamete is the sperm, female gamete is the egg, right? Now the very important organ of reproductive system of female is the ovary. Now what ovary do? It produces the egg. Okay, it produces the egg. Then after it produces the egg, these finger-like structure are present here, like holding the ovaries like this. Now this finger-like structure is called the fimbriae. Now these fimbriae take the egg from the ovary, which is produced by the ovary at every single month, okay, after the maturity, okay. So it produces the egg, it takes the egg, then from this tube-like structure, this tube is called the site of fertilization. Very important question, 1 mark question can be formed. And which organ is called the site of fertilization? That is the fallopian tube. This tube, there is a pair of tube which is called the fallopian tube. Now this fallopian tube then goes to this uterus. Uterus, very important parts. It's like such a hole which provides the nourishment to the egg and the development and the storement of the baby and offspring. Clear? Now this is the uterus. Then after this is vagina. Vagina, the structure. Now this vagina is actually acidic in nature, right? Acidic, as we know, acids are sour in taste, right? Acidic in nature. Now as we know, I just told you for your knowledge. Now this is cervix. Cervix present here. This is the cervix. Okay. Then after, now this uterus is actually like 4 centimeters thick and 8 centimeters long. And this what happens, this is the uterine cavity of the excretory system, and this uterus is actually made up of 3 layers. And firstly, which I think I forgot here, that is the testis is actually have 7 skin layered protective layer. 7, right? Firstly, it have inside it fat and then a skin coating on it to protect it. Okay. Now uterus also have 3 which are very important. First is perimetrium. Second is myometrium. Third is endometrium. These are the layers, 3 layers present on the uterus to protect the offspring. Okay, now female reproductive system is clear to us, but here there are also obstacles which come for fertilization to reach, means there are problems to reach sperm of the male to the female body. Why? The first obstacle it get is in vagina. What happens that in the vagina, I told you it's acidic in nature. Now their testes produce millions of sperms, very tiny in size. Now the what happens that is many of the sperms dies here. Very few are left which can tolerate this much of environment, goes upward, and then there in fallopian tube the second obstacle came. What happens here? There is like a very small structures which are present, which are called cilia. Can you see? It's called the cilia. Now cilia are like structures which are present here and which are like continuously lashing, and so because they are lashing all the time, they are helping actually mostly to come the sperm and act here, but more of the sperms stuck here and they can't reach the egg produced by the ovary, right? Egg is produced here, let's suppose sperm can't reach it. Now what happens? First egg is produced, second, then after what happens, egg develops for few weeks. It is called the zygote, which called the zygote formation. Then it develops more, it called the embryo. Then when it develops more, it's called the fetus. Now in this is the stage of a baby of offspring, in which what happens, all the parts of his body are identical, means this is hand, we can find out this is mouth, and all the parts of body we can figure out. This stage is called the fetus. Now this is the stage of egg. Now this is about all sexual reproduction. We had covered it in just few times. Now let's move to asexual reproduction, which mostly happen in different kinds of organisms like amoeba, paramecium, plasmodium, and like leishmania, etc, etc. So let's go to that part. Okay, now let's talk about asexual reproduction. Now, asexual reproduction are having different types. So, the first type is fission. Now, let's talk about the first one. The first is fission. So, what is fission? Now, fission in which a parent organism divides and split into few parts to develop a new organism, fully developed organism. Now fission is also of two types: binary fission and multiple fission. Binary fission and multiple fission. Now binary fission, let's talk about it first. Now binary fission is like when a parent body divides into two parts, right? And let's take an example. The example is the amoeba. Okay. Now it's like a structure which organism which have irregular shape, right? Let me draw it. Any shape. Now let's suppose this is amoeba. Okay, this is the mastermind, nucleus, the cytoplasm, protein, fats, all that which are present. Okay, now what happens in binary fission, that the organism like amoeba, it divides it into two parts. Firstly, nucleus starts to divide. Firstly, what happens? Nucleus starts to divide. Okay, it starts to divide. Then after it fully divide nucleus, then after the organism divides into two new fully developed organisms, right? Means from the parent body, two daughter shell are obtained by the binary fission. Okay, this is the first type of fission. Now let's move to the multiple fission. Now in the multiple fission, what happens? Now there is difference. Now as binary means bi, here come bi. Now bi means two. In this what happens? Two organisms are divided. In multiple fission means from a parent body, multiple organisms can be divided. Okay, now like plasmodium in this example, in which what happens, first nucleus divide, there is like outer covering which is called the cyst, and from which in favorable conditions break down and all are come out. This is called the multiple fission. Now let's move and talk about further asexual reproduction mode. Now the second is regeneration. Now in regeneration, let's talk about regeneration. In this, as it indicates, again generation, right? Now it means what happens if somehow the organism split from any body or is lost any parts of its body, then the cutted part is actually fully developed into new organism. And very perfect example is like starfish. If you cut any part of its body, the cutted part can develop into new starfish. Now this is called the regeneration, right? There are also like few more like vegetative propagation, in which plants part and stem, roots, leaves are cutted down, and by the few methods they can be grown properly into fully developed offspring. These are the types and modes of asexual reproduction. Now these are the modes of reproduction in animals. Now as we talk about reproduction in organisms today in this video, so for watching this, thank you.